Treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. The objectives of lecture as per musculoskeletal system block is classify the drugs commonly used in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, mention the indication, side effect, dosage, and toxicities of the drugs used in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, design a plan for treatment, prescribe the appropriate treatment for the different cases of rheumatoid arthritis, and the test required for monitoring the therapy of rheumatoid arthritis. In previous two sessions, we discussed the treatment of osteoarthritis and the treatment of gouty arthritis. Now we will discuss the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. What is rheumatoid arthritis? I hope you studied in the pathology about the all conditions of arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a chronic systemic inflammatory disorder. Chronic systemic inflammatory disorder characterized by potentially deforming polyarthritis. Polyarthritis involvement of the more than two joints, potentially deforming polyarthritis, swollen and tender joints of the hands and feet, and involves the multiple organ systems, including pleuropulmonary, cardiovascular, ophthalmic, and the connective tissue involvement. The systemic inflammation of rheumatoid arthritis leads to joint destruction, disability, and the premature death. The onset of rheumatoid arthritis typically occurs between third and fourth decades of life, means the age up to the 30 to 40 years of the life. The cause of rheumatoid arthritis involves many factors, including genetic susceptibility, environmental influences, advanced age, cigarette smoking, and the most important is immune factor. The clinically important features associated with poor long-term outcomes include functional limitations, extra-articular disease, positive rheumatoid factor or positive anti-CCP antibodies, and bone erosions by radiography. These are the outcomes of the clinical important features associated with poor long-term results. The goal of therapy in the patient of rheumatoid arthritis, the goal of treatment is the disease remission. The goal of treatment is disease remission. The most important goal in the therapy of rheumatoid arthritis is disease remission, because the sustained remission is uncommon in the management of rheumatoid arthritis. So the first goal is to manage the therapy of rheumatoid arthritis is disease remission. Other goals include relief of pain, minimizing the disease activity, preserving joint function, and slowing joint damage. Slowing joint damage and preserving joint functions. It will minimize the disease activity, improve or maintain the quality of life, because in most cases of the rheumatoid arthritis, the disability which affect the quality of life of humans. And the last but not least, control the associated systemic complications are the goal of the therapy in the rheumatoid arthritis. Let us see the treatment. The treatment of rheumatoid arthritis consists of two associations: non-pharmacologic therapy and the pharmacologic therapy. In non-pharmacologic therapy, the most important, patient education and psychosocial interventions is the most important therapy. Patient should know the disease symptoms and associated complications. Psychosocial interventions for the patient, which motivate the behavioral functions of the individual or patients. Rest and exercise, including walking, cycling, and the swimming. Physical and some occupational therapies are available to support the patient's daily life. And the screening for the treatment of osteoporosis, because the rheumatoid arthritis sometimes may leads to or associated with the osteoporosis risk factor. So simultaneously with the therapy of the rheumatoid arthritis, the screening and the treatment of osteoporosis is the most important therapy. In pharmacologic therapy, the DMARDs, we can say disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. DMARD, disease modifying anti-rheumatic drug. Now, as the name indicate, these drug modify the disease. These drug modify the disease, and these are the anti-rheumatic drugs. That's why termed as disease modifying anti-rheumatic drug, that is DMARD. Here, if these drugs are disease modifying, need to take continuously, either symptoms are present or not. For the sustained remissions. Generally, pharmacologic therapy include at least one DMARD plus non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for the pain and low-dose oral corticosteroids. These are the combinations generally given, commonly given for the therapy of rheumatoid arthritis. At least one disease modifying anti-rheumatic drug plus non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and plus low-dose oral corticosteroid. Anti-inflammatory drugs and glucocorticoids are used as bridging therapy. The role of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and glucocorticoids here are used as bridging therapy. Why? Because when we start the DMARD, the onset of the DMARDs takes some time, maybe takes some weeks. So in this period, the most important, the pain management is most effective goal. So that's why the NSAIDs and glucocorticoids are used as bridging therapy to rapidly achieve control of inflammation until DMARDs are sufficiently effective. As needed basis means when, if there is a patient feels the pain, at that time the patient should take non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or low-dose oral corticosteroid for the pain purpose or for inflammation purpose. If the patient didn't feel any pain, so he can just continue disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So anti-inflammatory drugs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and glucocorticoids are used as bridging therapies to rapidly achieve control of inflammation until DMARDs are sufficiently effective, because DMARDs will take some weeks till some weeks to some month to be active, and that's why we need the pain relievers. For the brief period of severe disease activity or while awaiting the onset of DMARD action. Let us see the first pain relievers, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. As we know, this drug inhibits the COX cyclooxygenase and thereby decreases the prostaglandin synthesis, analgesic, and if there is decrease in the prostaglandin synthesis, it will result in the analgesic, antipyretic, an anti-inflammatory effect, relief of the pain and inflammation, but they do not prevent or slows the joint destruction. Remember, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are not disease modifying drug therapy. These are just for the symptomatic relief of pain and inflammation. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug decreases the synthesis of renal vasodilator prostaglandins. Thereby, it affects the vasoconstriction of afferent arterioles. Thereby, it decreases the GFR, leads to fluid retention and decrease the urine output. And if the urine output is decreased, it increases the serum creatinine and increases the blood urea nitrogen. So it is most important while prescribing non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the patient's renal function should be tested to avoid further complications. Thereby, if there is a question which is the most or commonly used drug in patient with the problem in renal functions or in advanced age, which non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is most suitable, the answer is Sulindac. Sulindac is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs but has fewer adverse effect on kidney than other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Why? Because the renal or we can say kidney prostaglandins are not affected by Sulindac. Again, why? Because Sulindac has renal sparing effect, kidney sparing effect. It spares the kidney because Sulindac is a pro-drug. Sulindac is pro-drug. And what is the role of pro-drug? Sulindac is a pro-drug and thereby converted to the active metabolite in liver and become reversibly inactivated in the kidney and becomes reversibly inactivated in the kidney, and thereby it does not affect the kidney or renal prostaglandins. So if the patient having the kidney problem, kidney functions not working properly or advanced age, the best to prescribe Sulindac. Other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, including diclofenac, ibuprofen, celecoxib, and all other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, increases the risk of myocardial infarction, which is a concern for rheumatoid arthritic patient and which may leads to some thrombotic cardiovascular events. So thereby it's most important the diclofenac, ibuprofen, celecoxib, and other NSAIDs should be avoided in the rheumatic arthritic patient. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs therapy should be avoided if possible in patient with high risk for the NSAID induced renal disease plus hepatotoxicity and plus gastrointestinal bleeding patients. Let us continue the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Precautions during the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs in rheumatic arthritic patients. Which test is important while the rheumatic arthritic patient on non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs therapy? The most important is serum creatinine level at baseline. The serum creatinine level should be monitored or tested before the start of therapy at baseline, and then weekly after the start of therapy, then weekly for several weeks after initiation of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs therapy in patient with high risk of NSAIDs induce renal disease, because renal insufficiency more occurs early, that is 15 days in the course of therapy, or later 6.5 month after the therapy. So that's why the monitoring of the serum creatinine level in the patient of the renal insufficiency is most important. If after starting of the NSAIDs therapy in the patient and renal insufficiency more occurs early 15 days after the start of therapy, we can say it's due to allergic interstitial nephritis. We can say it's an allergic interstitial nephritis. And if the renal insufficiency of serum creatinine level is occur in the course of therapy or later near about 6.5 month, we can say it's an non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug induced nephrotic syndrome. So these are the two terminologies. Allergic interstitial nephritis will occur after the start of NSAIDs therapy near about in between 15 days, and NSAIDs induced nephrotic syndrome will occur in the course of therapy or later near about 6.5 months. We can say it's an non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs induced nephrotic syndrome. That's why the monitoring of serum creatinine level is the most important follow-up. Second one is liver function test. Before the start of the therapy with NSAIDs, a baseline ALT, then no later than 8 weeks after the initiation of NSAIDs therapy in patients with high risk for NSAID induced hepatotoxicity, because the liver toxicity manifests early in the therapy. So it is observed that while the patient starting on the NSAID therapies, the liver function test may be abnormal till the 8 weeks in the patients who are on high risk of NSAID induced hepatotoxicity, because the liver toxicity generally occurs in the early of therapy near about till the 8 weeks. So it's very important before the start of therapy, check the liver function test of ALT, alanine transaminase, and then near about 8 weeks, test again and check the difference between two lab findings. The most important non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs uses during pregnancy in patient with rheumatoid arthritis. NSAID should be avoided during a conception cycle and during the early pregnancy. Why? Because they may interfere with the implantation. So in the women, it should be avoided during the conception cycle and during the early pregnancy, because NSAIDs may interfere with the implantation of the pregnancies. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs may use during the second trimester but should be avoided during the third trimester of pregnancy. Why? Second trimester, okay, but not in third, because it is reported that NSAIDs therapy during third trimester of pregnancy reported the risk of premature closure of ductus arteriosus and inhibition of labor. So premature closure of the ductus arteriosus in the fetus and inhibition of the labor are the reported adverse effect of NSAIDs during third trimester of pregnancy. So this is all about the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Let us continue the second most important therapy, which is termed as disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, that is DMARDs. Now there are two types of the DMARDs in general, in common: biological DMARDs and non-biological DMARDs. Biological DMARDs, these are the monoclonal antibodies, and non-biological DMARDs are the synthetic drugs. The non-biological DMARDs is also termed as conventional synthetic DMARDs. The short form of the conventional synthetic is CS DMARDs. When there is a CS, these are the conventional, and synthetic DMARDs, also termed as non-biological DMARDs. Their onset is generally slow. Their onset is generally slow. And the examples of the commonly used conventional disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs are methotrexate. Methotrexate is also used in the treatment of the cancer. Leflunomide, hydroxychloroquine, hydroxychloroquine also used in the treatment of the malaria. And sulfasalazine, which is from the derivative of the sulfonamides. These are the non-biological or conventional synthetic DMARDs. Less commonly used, or we can say second line agents, includes minocycline, gold, azathioprine, and D-penicillamine. These are the less commonly used second line, and it's generally given if the first line agents are or commonly used drugs not significantly useful. Targeted synthetic DMARDs include tofacitinib and generally given orally. And the third one is biologic DMARDs, which is termed as B, biologic DMARDs, and generally given subcutaneous or intravenous route. And these are generally monoclonal antibodies, including rituximab. Let us see the one by one. Disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. DMARD should be started in all patients with rheumatoid arthritis as soon as possible. Why? DMARD should be started in all patients with rheumatoid arthritis as soon as possible. As the name indicates, these are the disease modifying. They are able to modify the disease. So, to minimize the loss of joint integrity and function, as much of the joint damage, to minimize the loss of joint integrity and function, as much of the joint damage, disability begins early in the course of the disease. That is, 80% of the patient with rheumatoid arthritis of less than 2 years duration had joint space narrowing, and 70% had erosions on X-ray of the hand, wrist, and feet. So within 2 years of the duration of the rheumatoid arthritis, the joint space narrowing is found 80%, and 70% patients had erosions on X-ray of hand, wrist, and feet. So it's very important to start up the therapy with the DMARDs to avoid the joint destruction. And second one, to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease related to rheumatoid arthritis, because in the most of the cases, rheumatoid arthritis also affects the organs, including most commonly heart. General baseline lab test for all rheumatoid arthritis patients before the start of the therapy with DMARDs include, these are the baseline should be taken before the start of therapy with the DMARDs, and include complete blood count, serum creatinine, amino transferases, ESR and CRP, hepatitis B and C. These are the tests required to monitor the therapy with the DMARDs. Baseline ophthalmologic examination before hydroxychloroquine therapy. Baseline ophthalmologic examination before hydroxychloroquine therapy is very important. Examination of the retina through a dilated pupil and automated visual field testing is to be required before start of the hydroxychloroquine therapy, because hydroxychloroquine reported to have affects the eye and the visions. Let us see the first DMARDs, that is non-biological, or we can say conventional synthetic disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. Conventional synthetic disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. The initial non-biological or conventional synthetic DMARD selection is based on three factors. The first one is disease activity, low versus moderate to high, disease duration, and whether poor prognostic findings are present. These are the three factors for selection of the DMARDs. For most patients, methotrexate and leflunomide are chosen initially. Initially, the commonly used drug for the rheumatoid arthritis is methotrexate or leflunomide. These are chosen initially because of high rates of clinical response for all levels of rheumatic arthritis severity. These methotrexate and leflunomide reported to have high rates of clinical response in the disease modifying activity of RA. Radiographic evidence of slowing joint erosions, which is the most rapid during the first several years of active disease. So in general, the commonly used DMARDs are methotrexate and leflunomide because of the high rates of clinical response plus slowing joint erosions as a radiographic evidence. Combination therapy of DMARD is prescribed for patients. Combination therapy, two drugs of the DMARDs is prescribed for patients who fail methotrexate monotherapy and for patient with more severe or more advanced rheumatoid arthritic conditions. So where the combination is required, when the monotherapy with the methotrexate is failed or the disease is more severe or more advanced, then we need the combination therapy of DMARDs. Let us see the drugs one by one. The pharmacology of DMARDs. Methotrexate, the most commonly used DMARD in the RA patients. Let us see the mechanism, how it acts. Methotrexate inhibits multiple intracellular enzymes that are responsible for the activation of inflammatory cells, including PNLs, T cells, and macrophages. Inhibit the multiple intracellular enzymes responsible for activation of inflammatory cells, including PNLS, which is termed as polymorphonuclear leukocytes, T cells, and macrophages. Side effects of methotrexate: long-term low doses of methotrexate in RA patients reported to have alopecia, we can say baldness, interstitial pneumonitis, osteoporosis, and the chronic active hepatitis, because methotrexate elevates some liver enzymes and also liver cirrhosis are the reported adverse effect with the methotrexate. Generally, folic acid 1 milligram per day or 7 milligram once weekly is concomitantly administered with methotrexate to reduces the incidence of methotrexate toxicity, that is hepatotoxicity. So to avoid the hepatotoxicity in the patient of rheumatoid arthritis taking methotrexate, there should be addition of 1 milligram per day folic acid or 7 milligram once weekly should be recommended to the patient. High doses of methotrexate. What are the adverse effects for the high doses of methotrexate? Acute renal failure caused by tubular obstructions with crystals of the methotrexate. We can say crystalluria. This methotrexate forms the crystalluria. So it should be treated with, if the patient taking high dose of methotrexate, should be treated with diuresis with alkalization of urine using intravenous sodium bicarbonate. Alkalization of urine by using intravenous sodium bicarbonate. This alkalization increases the solubility of methotrexates and its metabolites and thereby decreases the crystalluria and thereby decreases the nephrotoxicity, or we can say decreases the acute renal failure. Second drug from the category of conventional, synthetic, or non-biological DMARDs include leflunomide. An oral conventional synthetic DMARD that is similar to efficacy to methotrexate. It is generally available as oral and efficacy same as methotrexate. It can be used in place of methotrexate for initial drug therapy, or maybe combined with methotrexate therapy, or serve as replacement for methotrexate intolerance patient. So leflunomide is also used in patient where methotrexate is contraindicated or intolerance not working properly, or also used with the combined with the methotrexate in the patient required severe therapy. The active metabolite of leflunomide, which is termed as M1, the active metabolite of leflunomide M1 is responsible for all pharmacologic activity of leflunomide, and this metabolite is having probability of adverse effect. The T half, T half, the time required to eliminate 50% of drug from the body, the T half of the M1 metabolite is 2 weeks, and thereby the onset of benefit as early as 4 weeks. It need near about 4 weeks to activate, and the T half is near about 2 weeks. How the therapy of leflunomide should be initiated? Because the onset of benefit as early as 4 weeks, and the T half of the M1 metabolite of leflunomide is 2 weeks. So it's most important how to initiate the therapy with the leflunomide. Leflunomide should be initiated with a loading dose of 100 milligram orally. The loading dose should be 100 milligram orally once daily for 3 days. So for 3 days, the dose will be 100 plus 100 plus 100. Total is 300 milligram for 3 days. Why? This is a loading dose, because generally the maintenance dose of the leflunomide is only 10 to 20 milligram, but loading dose is 100 milligram. Why? To reduce the time to steady state, to reduce the time to achieve the serum concentration, serum steady state concentration, as T half of the M1 metabolite is 2 weeks. That's why, to reduce the time in maintaining the steady state of the drug concentration in the serum, it should be started with the loading dose of 100 milligram once a daily for 3 days. After that, after 3 days, the maintenance dose is only 20 milligram once daily orally. And if this dose is not tolerated, the patient can reduce the dose to 10 milligram once daily orally. What are the precautions? Leflunomide is not recommended in patient with pre-existing liver disease due to M1 metabolite, including hepatitis B or C. What are the precautions, or we can say contraindications? Leflunomide is not recommended in patient with pre-existing liver disease, including hepatitis B or C. Why? Because of the risk of liver toxicity with leflunomide and the need of leflunomide for activation by the liver to the M1 active metabolite. Here, the role of liver is most important to convert the to convert the leflunomide into the M1 metabolites. The healthy liver is most important to convert the leflunomide to the M1 metabolite, which is the pharmacological active metabolites of leflunomide. So if the patient is having liver disease, then this liver disease or the liver with the disease condition is not able, or liver with the hepatitis B or C is not able to convert the pharmacologic active metabolite of leflunomide to M1, and thereby it will increase the risk of liver toxicity. Thereby, it should be not recommended in patient with pre-existing liver disease, including hepatitis B or C. The rate of leflunomide induced liver enzyme elevation is not different than methotrexate. So both drug methotrexate and leflunomide increases the liver enzymes. Let us see the mechanism and pharmacology of leflunomide. Mechanism: it decreases the pyrimidine synthesis, thereby arrest of stimulated cells in the G1 phase of the cell growth and suppresses the T cell and B cell functions. Adverse effect of leflunomide includes alopecia, same as methotrexate, diarrhea, rash, and reversible liver enzyme inhibition, that is ALT. How will you monitor the adverse effect of leflunomide, or how will you monitor the therapy with the leflunomide? Liver function testing: a baseline before the startup therapy with the leflunomide, a baseline ALT, then monthly ALT for several months, and then if the stable with normal limit, testing can be performed less frequently. So monitoring of the therapy with the leflunomide needs the testing liver function test before the start of therapy, during the start of therapy. How will you manage the leflunomide potential hepatotoxicity? Guideline for managing leflunomide potential hepatotoxicity. The first one: doses reduction from 20 to 10 milligram per day if ALT increases more than 2 times the ULN, the dosage should be reduced from 20 milligram to 30 milligram, sorry, 20 milligram to 10 milligram in patient with the potential hepatotoxicity. Generally, the common dosage is 20 milligram per day, but if the patient has the hepatotoxic events, then the dosage reduction from 20 milligram to 10 milligram per day. If ALT increases more than 2 times the upper limits of normal, upper limits of normal. If ALT, that is alanine aminotransferase, elevation remains steady between, if alanine aminotransferase elevation remains steady between 2 to 3 times the upper limit of normal, despite dosage reduction and the treatment continuation is desired, a liver biopsy is recommended. If ALT elevation remains steady between 2 to 3 times the upper limit of normal, despite the dosage reduction and the treatment continuation is desired, then liver biopsy is recommended. If ALT elevations are persistently more than 3 times, if ALT elevations are persistently more than 3 times the upper limit of normal, despite dosage reduction, then leflunomide should be discontinued and cholestyramine should be given. Cholestyramine should be given to enhance its elimination. So cholestyramine generally used to eliminate the active metabolite M1 from the body, which is responsible for the pharmacological effect as well as adverse effect. Third drug from the category of conventional synthetic DMARDs is sulfasalazine. Mechanism of action: sulfasalazine is metabolized by gut flora through sulfapyridine and 5-aminosalicylic acid. Sulfapyridine is the active metabolite when treating the patient with rheumatoid arthritis. So this sulfasalazine is converted into the sulfapyridine. What is the role of sulfapyridine in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, decrease the production of rheumatoid factor, that is IgA or IgM, suppression of the T cell and B cell responses, and the proliferation. Sulfasalazine is dosed at 1 gram 2 or 3 times daily. 1 gram 2 or 3 times daily. The onset of its effect become apparent within 1 to 4 months, and dosage should be adjusted only after this period. So once you started with the therapy of the sulfasalazine, its onset generally required within 1 to 4 months. So if you get benefit effect within 1 to 4 months of the starting of the therapy, then there is no need of the dose adjustment. But there is no significant therapeutic effect, then and then after 4 months you can adjust the dose. Sulfasalazine adverse effect includes nausea, abdominal discomfort, heartburn, dizziness, headache, skin rashes, and rarely leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, and hepatitis. How will you monitor the therapy of sulfasalazine in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis? Monitoring sulfasalazine adverse effect. Complete blood count, liver function test, and renal function testing at baseline, and then every 2 to 4 weeks for the first 3 months of therapy, and then every 3 months thereafter. To minimize the adverse effect, sulfasalazine is initiated at the dose of 0.5 to 1 gram per day, and the dosage is increased at weekly interval by 0.5 gram until 1 gram 2 to 3 times daily is reached. So this is the monitoring of the therapy with the sulfasalazine. Fourth drug amongst the category of conventional synthetic, or we can say non-biological DMARDs, is hydroxychloroquine. Mechanism: inhibits the DNA and RNA synthesis in inflammatory cells, suppress T lymphocytes response to antigens, stabilize lysosomal enzymes. The doses 200 to 400 milligram daily oral. Although both hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine are recommended first line DMARDs for patient with mild to moderate rheumatoid arthritis, it is more common to add either or both of these to the regimen of patient who are not achieving adequate RA control from methotrexate. So generally, the startup therapy is with the methotrexate, and if the patient is not getting benefit from the methotrexate, then and then you can add either hydroxychloroquine or either sulfasalazine or either leflunomide. Hydroxychloroquine adverse effect: ocular toxicities is reported with the hydroxychloroquine. The reversible ocular toxicity includes cycloplegia, that is a paralysis of accommodation, and corneal deposits. And once the drug therapy is stopped with the hydroxychloroquine, the cycloplegia and corneal deposits are reversible. But irreversible adverse effect of hydroxychloroquine includes retinopathy, that is retinal toxicity in high risk group. Which are the high risk group? The patient with pre-existing retinal disease, pre-existing retinal disease, long-term treatment for more than 5 years with the hydroxychloroquine, high doses more than 6.5 milligram per day, 6.5 milligram per kg per day, or more than 250 milligram per day. Patients older than 60 years of the age, and altered liver or kidney functions. If the liver or kidney functions are altered, drug is not able to metabolize and excrete properly, and thereby build up the toxic concentration in the serum and the responsible for retinopathy, that is retinal toxicity. What is the precautions? An ophthalmologic examination is recommended at baseline and then every 3 months to monitor the therapy with the hydroxychloroquine. Other adverse effects include reversible myopathy, cardiopathy, and peripheral neuropathy in the patient with prolonged high doses therapy with the hydroxychloroquine. CNS effects includes headache, nervousness and insomnia, rashes and dermatitis, pigmentary changes of the skin and hair, and the gastrointestinal disturbances, including nausea and the vomiting. Now, just we discuss the conventional synthetic DMARDs. Now let us see the targeted synthetic DMARDs and the examples of the targeted synthetic DMARDs is tofacitinib, which is generally given orally in the form of tablet. Tofacitinib is a Janus kinase inhibitor, that is JAK inhibitor, Janus kinase inhibitor. It inhibits the leukocyte function and immune response. It is indicated for individual with moderate to high disease activity who failed conventional synthetic DMARDs monotherapy. So tofacitinib is the drug which is not indicated for the mild patients or mild disease activity. It is not a first line agent. It is only indicated if the conventional synthetic DMARDs like methotrexate, leflunomide, hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine are failed, not significant intolerance, then and then you can use targeted synthetic DMARDs, that is tofacitinib. What is this JAK Janus kinase. A Janus kinase is a targeted molecule involved with signal transduction pathway that modulates leukocyte function and immune response. So thereby, the mechanism of action is the tofacitinib inhibits the Janus kinase enzyme. Third one is biological DMARDs for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. Biological DMARDs generally given by injections, subcutaneous or intravenous. They inhibit the inflammatory response mediated in immune cells. The ACR guideline, American College of Rheumatology guideline, recommends the use of biological DMARDs for patients who have failed to respond to one or more conventional synthetic DMARDs alone or in combination. And the patient with established rheumatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, who experience moderate to high disease activity despite conventional synthetic DMARDs monotherapy. So American College for Rheumatology indicates the use of biological DMARDs in the patient in whom they failed or did not responded to one or combination therapy with the leflunomide, methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine, or sulfasalazine. And in the patient who established rheumatic arthritis and experience moderate and high disease activity in spite of using methotrexate, leflunomide, hydroxychloroquine, or sulfasalazine monotherapy. Which are the examples of biological DMARDs? Etanercept, adalimumab, certolizumab can be used as monotherapy or in conjunction with the methotrexate. Other examples of biological DMARDs include rituximab, anakinra, and abatacept. These are the examples of biological DMARDs. The most important, management of rheumatoid arthritis during pregnancy. Which drug is safe during pregnancy and which drug is teratogenic and should be avoided during the pregnancy. Methotrexate is a teratogenic. Methotrexate, which is a conventional synthetic or we can say non-biological DMARDs, is teratogenic and should be stopped 3 months prior to the conception in women. And start folic acid supplementation, which is recommended prior to the pregnancy in women taking methotrexate. So methotrexate is teratogenic and should be stopped 3 months prior to the conception in women. So we can say methotrexate is teratogenic and should be avoided during pregnancy. Second drug from the conventional synthetic DMARDs is leflunomide, which is also teratogenic as per the FDA pregnancy category it is X means contraindicated. So methotrexate and leflunomide should be avoided during the pregnancy in women's. What is the guideline for discontinuation of leflunomide? After discontinuation of leflunomide, up to 2 years may need to elapse before plasma M1 metabolite levels of leflunomide are undetectable and should be less than 0.02 milligram per liter. So, pregnancy should be avoided in patient on leflunomide until undetectable serum concentration of M1 metabolites should be less than 0.02 milligram per liter are verified. So generally, to wash out the M1 metabolite of leflunomide, it will take near about 2 years, and the M1 plasma metabolite level should be less than 0.02 milligram per liter to avoid the teratogenic effect in the women. After stopping the leflunomide, there should be recommendation. After stopping the leflunomide, cholestyramine 8 milligram 3 times is given, 3 times per day is given for 11 days. Then after 14 days, the patient blood is tested to verify the absence of metabolite. If plasma M1 level remains greater than 0.02 milligram per liter, another course of cholestyramine should be administered. So, to remove the M1 metabolites of leflunomide from the body, it is recommended to use cholestyramine 8 gram 3 times a day for 11 days. And on the 14 days, the patient should be tested for M1 metabolite plasma level, and it should be less than 0.02 milligram per liter. And if the concentration is more, another course of cholestyramine should be administered. Another option is with activated charcoal can be effective alternative to cholestyramine. Activated charcoal should be given to the patient to remove the M1 plasma metabolite concentrations. So, management of rheumatoid arthritis during pregnancy. Let us see which drugs are safe and which drugs are avoided during the pregnancy in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis in the women. Hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, and azathioprine are safe in pregnancy. So, which are avoided? Methotrexate and leflunomide. But hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, and azathioprine are the safe during the pregnancy. Some tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitors. These are the monoclonal antibodies. Tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitors, and these are from the biological DMARDs. These are from the biological DMARDs. These are the FDA pregnancy category B, safe in the first and second trimester, but should be discontinued by the third trimester to avoid the immunosuppression in the newborn. It means that if The biological DMARDs, which inhibits the tumor necrosis factor alpha, is continued in the third trimester of the pregnancy. It will cause immunosuppression in the newborn. The pegylated agent, that is certolizumab pegol. Pegylated means it contains polyethylene glycol, is the only tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitor that can be used in third trimester of the pregnancy. So there is only one drug which can be used in the third trimester of the pregnancy from the category of biological DMARDs, which inhibits the tumor necrosis factor alpha, is certolizumab, which are the monoclonal antibody. Plus, infants exposed to tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitors in utero should not receive Live vaccines for the first 6 months of life. Infant exposed means the pregnant women exposed to the or taken tumor necrosis factor alpha inhibitors, including certolizumab and other monoclonal antibodies, should not receive live vaccines for first 6 months of the life, because due to immunosuppression, these live vaccines may increases the pathogenicity and will affect the newborn. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can be used during the second trimester and up until the week 30 of gestation, as we discussed this use of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs during the pregnancy. It should be avoided in the third trimester of pregnancy and before the conception in women. Glucocorticoids, steroids, non-fluorinated glucocorticoids, examples prednisone, prednisolone, which are given by the oral route, and methylprednisolone, which is given by the intravenous route. They may cross the placenta at very low concentrations and are relatively safe to use during pregnancy in low to moderate concentrations. Example, prednisone, no more than 10 milligram per day should be used during the pregnancy. The fluorinated glucocorticoids, which contain fluoride, examples are the betamethasone and the dexamethasone, which are long-acting steroids. They cross the placenta at higher concentrations and are used to hasten the lung maturity in cases of expectant delivery of premature infants, but should be avoided in early pregnancy because these betamethasone and dexamethasones are teratogenic. Betamethasone and dexamethasones only used during the labor if the newborn is with lung immaturity, or we can say if there is an expected delivery of the premature infants to make the lung matured, betamethasone and dexamethasone is used, but it should be avoided in the early pregnancy because teratogenic effect of beta and dexamethasone. So these are the management of rheumatoid arthritis during the pregnancy, which drug should be indicated and which drug should be avoided. Thank you very much. Any questions?